Alright everyone, welcome to another episode of Triad Expeditions, and in this episode we are going to be looking at the Wholesale Automatic Transmissions manual torque converter lockup module. And I know that's a mouthful to say, but it is really just a kind of a simple concept, and we're going to be talking about this more in detail as far as how this thing works and what it looks like in the installed configuration. So I'm going to go underneath. This is the passenger side of the FJ, and we're going to go underneath here to basically show how easy it is to install this. So the glove box comes out, no hardware, just little tabs that you push in, drops the glove box out. Most of you have seen before, that's where you change your cabin filter, and right up into there you'll be able to see a module straight in the middle of the screen right now that is double-sided up there, and then there's a resistor that is zip tied in place where it won't get in contact with anything. So those are the wires that you are going to solder in the module loom, and then there is a wire harness that will travel through the area here and go over to the other side of the dash where the switch is installed. And the thing about the switch, I just want to kind of say that initially, and apologize for the shaky camera work here, but initially I had thought that I wanted to install the switch in this area here because, as you can see, there's plenty of punch out panels that are not being occupied in that situation, in that the switch is there, but I ended up going with, and I'll move the light over there so we can see this better, I ended up going with this area over here. There was an additional open switch there next to where the mirror controls are, and that is actually where it landed. So, and that is really the preferred place in my opinion, because if you're driving, most people, I do, right-handed drivers, right-handed drivers, meaning I'm right-handed, will keep your right hand on the steering wheel. You're supposed to keep both, obviously, but if you need to hit something, it's better to use your left hand to hit that lockup. And what that stands for is Lockup TCC, and when you hit the button it'll say lockup, and that will lock up the torque converter clutch. Okay, so that's what TCC stands for, is torque converter clutch. All right, let's talk about some details regarding the Wholesale Automatics Transmissions module that they've created. And what the module is the torque converter is reluctant to hold a lockup because of the overall increased weight of a modified vehicle. We put steel bumpers, bull bars, roof racks, larger tires, awnings, extra fuel, everything in the world on our overland vehicles. And in that process, the vehicle is a lot heavier than it used to be. This actually works against the original programming of the ECM that is programmed to lock up the torque converter clutch, the TCC, at specified speeds and times and load values. And when we put this extra weight in larger tires, that actually works against that programming, making this module even more necessary. So what it does is there is a solenoid, and I'm going to pull up a graphic of the solenoid now for you. So this solenoid, the solenoid actuates a valve, and I'll put an arrow right there at the valve that it actuates. This valve actually allows fluid to pass through a shaft that is the input shaft that goes to the torque converter clutch, and the pressure on the backside of that clutch locks that clutch up. So it actually uses transmission fluid to make this happen. And so that's the actual valve that occurs there. Some of the things that I need to tell you about, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, about the installation process is that you will need to solder in the wires into your ECM. You're not going to just twist them in there and put some electrical tape on it and call it done. So you're going to need, if you don't know how to solder, good, you don't have the right equipment, you don't have a good soldering iron or gun, then you're going to need to find somebody that is good at it, because this is something that you do not want to come loose at the wrong time. And don't be intimidated about that. It's not very many connections. I'm actually going to put the schematic up for you now just to show that it's really not that many wires. It just needs to be done right. So the installation overall is pretty easy. The wires are plenty long to be able to run the wires over to the other side of the vehicle, so that's not a problem. It's mounted underneath the passenger side section of the dash where I showed you earlier, where the ECM is located. And it should be mounted to the left of the steering column like I was showing you. Alright, what are some of the benefits of having the manual lockup module? Some of the benefits are going to be lower RPMs for the vehicle as it goes down the road. You won't have any power loss because the engine and the transmission are turning at a 1-to-1 ratio with the clutch locked up. And you'll have less fuel consumption, an estimated 10 to 15% less. And this will quickly, in my opinion, for me, pay for itself, especially being that I can only use premium fuel. For example, if you're getting 13 miles per gallon, you're now going to get about 15 miles per gallon. I don't get 13 miles per gallon, but I believe that a lot of folks that drive FJs that are not overly modified, that is probably about the average that they do get. I get about 11 miles per gallon. The other thing is that there'll be less cycling of the torque converter clutch because of the fact that it's locked up. It won't be engaging and disengaging as the computer is falsely thinking that it needs to lock up or disengage. You'll have lower transmission temperatures because of the fact that the transmission fluid is not churning through the torque converter, making the vehicle go down the road. It actually will be the torque converter clutch being locked up that is taking the load of the vehicle going down the road. You'll have less seeking and downshifting of the transmission into the lower gears due to a small rise in a highway or interstate. Even going down I-70 here in Ohio, where there's really not many hills in our area, even just the slightest incline would make the FJ downshift, especially when towing. So this will definitely reduce that because of the extra power. And I know for a lot of folks that have put larger tires on their FJ Cruiser and complain about the fact that their transmission seeks all the time. And I experienced the same thing, especially before I re-geared. After re-gearing, it did help, but before that, it did it quite a bit. So this is really a modification that you can do that is a lot cheaper than re-gearing. I'm not saying that it will have as much of an effect as re-gearing, but it will definitely have an effect because of the extra power that you are realizing. A lot of folks will do modifications such as headers, aftermarket exhaust. They believe their modified cold air intake gives them a good amount more horsepower. And I can tell you that this here, in my opinion, this module for certain applications will give you more power, especially when towing, than those other modifications that you might be thinking that you need to increase the power of your FJ. So you might want to do this first before any of those. So when do you want to use this module? When do you want to engage it? When hitting the button to lock up the torque converter clutch. So for on-road use, you really only want to use it for towing. And if you're not towing, then you will simply not need to use the lockup manual control. It's perfect though for towing because you cannot maintain enough speed for the factory lockup to stay engaged, or an extra weight has a side effect of blocking the lockup function completely. So the good thing about this is it does compensate for that extra weight that I was talking about, and especially if you're not cruising at a speed that it should be, that it wants to see for it to be able to engage. So another time you can use it is the lockup manual control can be used as an aid to improve engine braking down large steep descents, or while changing down through the gears manually. This can be used when towing also. Off-road, you can use the lockup manual control to gain 100% engine braking, eliminating all torque converter runaway for steep downhill descents in both low and high range. And in off-road use, the Lockup manual control can also be used for beach work where the sand is firm. It does specifically say not to use it if you are in soft sand or mud, so that's something to keep in mind. It's perfect for the never-ending corrugated roads where, once again, you cannot maintain enough speed for the factory lockup to be maintained. So let's say you're going down a you're going down a road that you really don't want to travel any more than 50 miles per hour, such as like in Alaska or even just somewhere out in Utah, where there's big open spaces and the roads are just dirt roads that are not improved. You're not going to want to go down the road at 60 some miles per hour in top gear. Those lower speeds, if you use this lockup module, you'll still get a better fuel mileage as you go down these roads for a good amount of distance. So when do you not want to use it? And I think this is pretty important to keep this in mind, and it is a little bit of an education when you do get the module of when not to use it. You do not want to use the lockup control for crawling over rough terrain. You don't want to lock up the control for uphill climbs or overtaking, and do not use the lockup control with more than 50% throttle. That's a pretty important one there. So if you're going up a hill and you're having to really get into the throttle, you should definitely disengage your lockup module. Do not use the lockup control on soft sand or mud as previously stated. So that is a couple more details regarding the lockup module. I hope this is helpful. I know in part 1 of the transmission modifications, we kind of did an overview of all of them. But now that it has been installed and I've done a little bit more research as far as how it actually works and what it does, I'm even more happy with the result of it. And going down the road, it definitely was noticeable, and I was able to test it on some downhill ascents, and I definitely could tell the difference as far as the engine braking. I wasn't really having to brake at all. Even on the larger hills, the engine was actually slowing me down. So, very happy with that. In the next episode, we're going to be showing you the external transmission cooler and how it was installed. And then as we get more experience with the valve body, we'll definitely do another video that talks about the experience with the valve body and the lockup module and external transmission when we're actually pulling our trailer down the road here in about a month or so when we take our first trip. Alright everyone, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe for future episodes. We're releasing episodes all the time, and you want to hit that subscribe button and hit that bell notification to make sure that you're notified when our next episode comes out.